everyone. We are back with another career interview, and we have John Bechtel with Bethel Assembly, and he's going to provide you information about his job and career as a children's pastor. Is that correct, the title? And he's going to let you know about his journey and what he really enjoys about his job. So I'm going to pass it on over to you.
Well, first my journey, I suppose. You know, I have a lot of life experience that you probably wouldn't think would go along with being a children's pastor. I worked for a rehabilitation center, that's a drug rehabilitation center, for 9 years before I became a children's pastor. And I had some other jobs before that. But I would say that the biggest part of my journey that led me into being a children's pastor was Jesus Christ. So I have this worldview that I realized, I would say in my early 30s, that the God that made us knows us better than anybody else does. And since he knows us, we should listen to him and let him be in charge of our lives instead of trying to just run it on our own by trial and error. And so when I did that, when I decided to let God and his son, Jesus Christ, run my life, then I began to see what great value there was in the Bible, which is the book that he's given us to show us the way that he thinks. Mm-hmm. And really more than that, don't get me started on the Bible. I'm a children's pastor, I suppose I'd be allowed to. So once I realized that, then I started to feel on the inside that God was telling me that he was going to want me to be a pastor. So at this point, I should define for you, and Miss Brittany, you cut me off if my answers are too long.
You're fine. You're all good.
Okay, super. I should explain what a pastor is. So there are different kinds of guidance that we need in life, right? Your teachers will guide you for your education. Your parents will guide you in certain other life choices, right? And then there's your sports coach will guide you in how much you should exercise and so on. So a pastor's job is actually not to guide kids in their life choices so much as to help parents guide their kids in spiritual life choices. So, all right, so that's what a pastor is. A pastor, and now a pastor, an adults pastor is going to guide adults in their life choices and things like that. But a children's pastor is going to help kids and parents together make those things. So, talking about my journey. When I had realized that God wanted me to do that, I realized that I needed certain education to prepare me for that.
That was my next question.
Okay.
How does this happen?
Yes, absolutely. So just like a lot of other jobs, you're going to need a degree, at a minimum an associate's degree, but most children's pastors' positions will require a bachelor's degree. And interestingly, my bachelor's degree is not in my particular field that I'm hired for now.
What is it?
It's not, which is an interesting thing. I suppose this is a good time to tell kids, teens out there that if you get a bachelor's degree from college, there's a lot of things that it can go towards. A lot of times your employers are looking for, yes, they're looking for maybe a specific degree, but if you have some other qualifications, they may say, okay, as long as you have a bachelor's degree in anything, that you're educated to a certain level that will be acceptable for this position. So that's what happened to me. I have a bachelor's degree actually in science, in biology.
Really?
Yes, no kidding. I was a pre-med student.
Oh my God, that's so awesome.
But that was, of course, a long, long time ago that I had taken that. So I had that bachelor's degree. And when I applied for this job, or when I started thinking about taking as a children's pastor, I found out that one of the qualifications was to get Bible school training. In other words, you need to know what the Bible, you need to know the Bible inside and out, because that's going to be the main reference that you're going to be drawing from as you're teaching kids and parents.
That's awesome. I always wondered about that. Like, I didn't know if it was, oh yeah, the church just trains you, or if there was like an additional certification, which obviously there's like courses that you probably have to take. So are any of those courses like local? What does that look like?
You have different options you can do. And I did go for the online option of training. Yeah, and that was good. I had, actually, there was a mentor that I had, a local mentor that I needed to meet with on a regular basis. But most of my work was done online with online studies and online exams. And that was about 1 year's worth of training in addition to my bachelor's degree that I needed to be a kids pastor.
Oh, that's great. That's really insightful. Now, what would you say is the most rewarding part of being a children's pastor and working within the church? What does that look like for you?
Sure. Brittany, I think it's difficult to really take everything that is awesome about your job and just encapsulate it into one thing. I wish I could just put like a HDMI cable from my head to yours. And
yeah. Hey, even if you have a few, it's really great. Like a few great things. Yeah.
And there's so much emotion that comes along with the passion that you have for something. So I'm just going to pick a few things that come to my mind first. Like you said, one of them is since we believe that the Bible is a book that was written by the God that created the universe, who is a all-powerful, all-wise, and all-loving God, then anything taught out of that book is going to bring life to somebody. Physical life, but in a more eternal sense, spiritual life to that person. So one of the things I get to do every week is to look through the Bible and find something that's really inspiring and then tell it to the kids. What's cool about that is almost every time, it's found in a story. So I would almost redefine my job as I get to be a full-time storyteller. Every week I tell a story out of the Bible to the kids, and sometimes there's object lessons with it. Sometimes I get to wear a costume and act it out. Sometimes other people act it out along with me. There's always games that have to go along with it. It's like we take this story and the lesson that's going to be taught through it. It's like an object, and you turn that object all different ways and look at it from all these different angles until you know it really, really well. And there have been times when, say on a Sunday morning or a Wednesday night, when I've got a group of 20 or 30 kids and I'm telling a story, and I can sense during that story that they're getting it. They're getting the lesson from that story. And it's an eternal lesson, not just something temporary. They're getting it, and not just in their minds, but they're getting it at the core of them, in their heart, going beyond, deeper than the conscious. So that's one thing I really like. Another thing I really enjoy is part of my job is to make sure that everybody is okay. So let me kind of explain that.
Yeah.
So, right? You're like, well, that's intriguing. Make sure everybody's okay.
Yeah, I'm curious.
So the word pastor actually comes from an old word in Latin that means shepherd. And if you know, a shepherd is one who takes care of a bunch of sheep. And sheep are, and I know in English the word sheep has come to mean, somebody who blindly follows, but just discard that. This has nothing to do with that, really. A shepherd was someone who would, when he was out with his sheep, he would always look from one to the next, to the next, to the next. He would count them. If he had 35 sheep, he would count one, he knows them by name. That one, that one, that one. When he got all the way back to 35, he'd go back to one. and he counted them. And if you ever found one missing, he would go after him and make sure that you find them. Where did they go? So one of the things I really enjoy about my job is that I have a list of all the people that attend our church regularly, the kids, and the first thing that I do for them is I pray for them all the time. That list, and I pray for them one by one. I pray specific things for them. And then when we reach the end of the list, I go to the top and I pray again. And that's day by day. But secondly, I will call parents and just say, hey, are you guys doing okay? Is everything all right? And most of the time they say, yeah, things are fine. But every so often, say, no, this happened, or that happened, or there's this struggle that my kid is having, or maybe our whole family is having. I get to, right on the spot there, I get to listen to them, to empathize with them. And by the end of a lot of those phone calls, a parent is emotional, and sometimes I'm emotional too, because we're sharing about the struggles that they're having. And then I'll join them in their struggle by praying for them right there over the phone, in that personal meeting. And just pretty much regular basis, they will be okay after a while. You know, I'll stick with them. We'll go through that problem together. And it's really fulfilling to see, to know that God let you be a part of joining somebody else in their struggle and getting them through it when they might not have made it through it. They
I think that's really great in fully understanding outside of maybe administrative duties, like, you know, the connectivity part. You know, I think we're all built on relationships. And I know I've heard you and Pastor Phil say that before. It's all about relationships and building your community up. And I think that's what you do every day. That's part of your job title, even if it's not written down as a job description. So that's really great. Did you have any other, like, you know, what's very rewarding or a favorite of your career?
Well, those two things that I mentioned, they make up the two main responsibilities, I would say, being a pastor: teaching from the Bible and making sure everybody's okay.
Yeah.
But I think that all those things together comprise this other rewarding aspect, which is that you get to interact with people a lot. I like to do that. I mean, not 100% of the time. Everybody needs alone time, but I really enjoy, I feel energized by getting to interact with people, you know. And some people would rather be introverted and just kind of do their thing. And so there's a different job that they are supposed to have. But God made me the way he made me. And so, you know, it's kind of extroverted, I suppose. And so I really enjoy interacting with people. And as a children's pastor, I get to do that all day long, not just with adults, but with kids too. And I really enjoy it.
So branching off of that question, I have about 2 more questions. What are other careers that are within being a pastor? I know obviously we have a children's pastor, but what also is within the church that maybe students can learn from, or other job duties, or people like your colleagues? What does that look like?
You bet. So every church has a lead pastor. Our particular church, that's Phil Rube, and you know him. And he is just kind of in charge. He has to oversee the entire church. And, you know, his job is to, similar to mine, it's to teach the Bible to the adults and make sure the adults are okay, you know. And so I get to do that then for the kids. But he then has other things with his job, like overseeing the finances of the church and organizing events that the church is going to have and things like that. So that's one, that's a lead pastor. Another one is a youth pastor. That's for the ages of 12 to 13 up till 18 or so. I would say upper middle school to high school. And for our church, then that's Pastor Danny. And it's the same idea though as a pastor, that you are teaching from the Bible and making sure those are okay. Then there's a different category called a worship pastor. Most smaller to medium churches don't have a full-time worship pastor.
Okay.
Somebody who's there. And when I say worship pastor, I mean a musician who is good at playing an instrument, good at singing, and they will lead congregation during the services in singing songs.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a bigger church, you're going to have enough people and enough finances to hire a full-time worship pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And then some other ones that you'll find less commonly, but usually in bigger churches, are a nursery pastor, which would be making sure that during the services, all your kids, infants, 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds are taken care of, and safety protocols are established for them, things like that. Some churches have what they call an executive pastor. And that's usually for a church that's big enough where the lead pastor just can't do all his responsibilities.
Well, I know you mentioned what Pastor Phil does between the finances, kind of like that adult side, making sure that they're okay and, understanding the Bible for them. And so I totally get how there might need to be another person.
Yes. And it would be, so the lead pastor, that really frees the lead pastor up to focus on those 2 priorities, which are teaching the Bible to the adults and making sure the adults are okay. And then all the other stuff, the finances and events organizing and all that, if he can give it over to the executive pastor, then he can be even more excellent with his primary responsibilities.
That's really great. And I love, how in depth you went with each of those positions to show that there's so many opportunities for maybe if students are exploring this as a future career, that they can learn more about those different sectors and areas. So thank you so much. My last question is, if you have advice for students who are exploring this as not just as a children's pastor, but just, looking to be a pastor in general or looking for a career within their individual church, what would you suggest for them to do, or how to get involved, or any advice for them?
Yes. Wow. What a great question. The number one priority for a pastor is his own relationship with God. Every relationship is based on communication, right? If you don't communicate with somebody, your relationship is going to deteriorate. And so anybody, no matter how old they are, can communicate with God, because he is spirit and we are spirit as well. Our spirits communicate with him. We allow him to talk to us, which is primarily through the Bible. And then we talk back to him, which is primarily through prayer. So the Bible and prayer. So boiling that down, the bottom line is I would advise anybody who's thinking about being a pastor and feels really passionate, be called in that direction, make sure that your relationship with God is, that you're building, I should say, your relationship with God, that you're getting to know him. And the way that you do that is read the Bible daily, I would say, and also pray daily. And you'll find that relationship, that communication with God is, you'll begin to know him. Someone that you can't see with your eyes or hear with your ears, but you'll know him with your spirit. And once you know him, you'll find that he's a lot more likely to say, okay, now I'm going to give you this job of, teaching people about me out of the Bible and making sure they're okay, because since you know me, I know I can trust you with this responsibility.
Oh, I love that. It gives me chills. Well,
Yeah.
Pastor John, thank you so much. I hope our students found this interview very beneficial, and I loved your transparency with the different, roles within the church. And, if students are looking to possibly do this as a future career, just kind of advice and steps to move forward. So we really appreciate you taking time out of your day to further explain your job, your favorite things about your job, and how you're making a difference in your community. So thank you very much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for this opportunity, Brittany.